I felt a lot of pressure due to the immense amount of expectations put on me by the South Asian American Society. I wanted to get some of my crew together to have an open and honest conversation about mental health. Welcome to Breaking the Silence, the show that's all about pushing mental health into the spotlight. We have Ankur Varma. He's a psychotherapist from Chicago, and he also has the Instagram handle Brown Man Therapy. Super happy to have you. Can you tell us your story? Hey guys, thank you for being here. I know you guys personally from very different situations, so I'll try to explain that as well. We have Nimesh Patel, my cousin. He's an Emmy-nominated comedian, writer, model, and he's here to really support what we're trying to do here. Next up, we have Krishna, and he is one of our board members for South Asian Americans for Change, and he helps out with the operations team. Yash is here. He's a storyteller, and he has a really great comedy show called Hattie, and he's also a survivor of suicide. I'm so happy that you're here being so open and honest with us. Yeah, you know, it's rare to see men, at least South Asian men, even talk about like if they're sad or, you know, depressed, and you're out here talking about your entire story, which is commendable. I wanted to get some of my crew together to have an open and honest conversation about mental health. You know, people always say, why don't men, you know, just sit down and talk to each other, right? It's all solution-based, right? So I said, you know what? Let's just show what it looks like. Super happy to have you, Ankur Varma, psychotherapist, and also Brown Man Therapy on Instagram. I think the first thing I wanted to talk to you about was your story, man. I know we talked on the phone for a little bit, and you know, just a little bit that you told me, I felt a huge connection to your story because it kind of mirrored my story a little bit, or at least the way that I grew up. I would love to, you know, talk to you more about that. Can you tell us your story?
Where I typically start is that I'm from an Indian family that immigrated here in the 70s. And so, you know, that's really important to me, even though I wasn't born then, that, you know, I kind of identify with the roots of this like typical, but maybe not so typical immigrant story. A lot of immigrant families really struggle with this adjustment to the US, to the culture here, and trying to grasp onto their culture, you know, their original culture. And so that was an experience that, you know, I had in my family, both in my immediate family and my extended family and community. And so, you know, even when I made Indian friends, I felt very different from them, but also so as we talk, American friends felt different from them. So I definitely remember that as an experience of not really feeling like I belong, like that kind of hovering from social group to social group. We were supposed to be Indian at home and American at school. Yeah. And so, you know, for me, that was initially a thing of pride, right? Like, I'm Indian, I should be proud of my roots and who we are. But, you know, when you're at school and when you're around people who don't look like you know, everybody else at my school and my soccer team, my baseball team, was from very different backgrounds. And so that's kind of how I grew up, was feeling very different. And so, you know, I grew up really experiencing that duality. And so when I, you know, got a little bit older, I started to think about the future. You know, what do I want to do? That's what we're always asked. And so that's where I started to think about, you know, getting into medicine and becoming a doctor.
Tell us about how you got into therapy. I want to know more.
You know, growing up, I went on this traditional path of like, I'm gonna go into medicine and be a doctor because that's one of our like 4 options.
Did you even like medicine when you went into it?
I did. I was good at science and I wanted to help people. So adding those two things together equals medicine for South Asian people, right? And so, you know, for me, and then I focused from like 6th, 7th grade on. I focused all my extracurriculars on science and medicine. And then I got to college and I disliked all my pre-med classes, like almost all but like one or two. And then I started taking psychology classes, and I'm like, oh, this makes sense to me. This is easy, it comes naturally. But of course, changing course at that time was not really a realistic option. And so I went on to med school, and surprisingly, not surprisingly, I struggled again with some of those same topics, and just really became jaded with the field of medicine too. And so I ended up leaving med school. And so I actually then didn't know what I wanted to do.
Was that a big crush for your family when you left med school? Because I mean, they really wanted you to go, right?
It was difficult. I think, you know, when we talk about mental health, that's where really mental health started to come up for me. And at that time, I personally didn't know enough to put labels and to really recognize what I was going through. And so it kind of led to a boiling point of, you know, I don't know what else to do, but this is not it. When med school didn't work out, I, you know, during that time realized, I think I'm depressed. And I think I really need some support. And I can't say that my family was unsupportive. I think sometimes I think we have to recognize that we don't know how to support. And so, you know, it's really difficult when you're going through something hard and you know you need help, and you turn to the people that you know and you love, and they know and love you, but you don't know what you need, and they don't really know what you need. Right. And so you're both kind of doing some guesswork, and that becomes challenging. And so, you know, I think that was a little bit of my experience with that. And so I eventually, you know, left med school and was back at like square one, it felt like. You know, I started having conversations with friends who were like, hey, maybe you should pursue mental health and therapy. Like, that's something that you enjoy, and it seems like you might be good at it. And so ended up choosing Chicago for my master's degree, and moved to Chicago, which I probably put up there in like the top 2 or 3 decisions that I've ever made. And so, you know, I got my master's in counseling and sport and health psychology. And so that really allowed me to like marry my 2 interests of, you know, helping people, but also, you know, for me, I don't know, I had this moment like the summer before I left where all of a sudden my brain like clicked into place, and I started thinking about things, and things became more clear. And I had never experienced that with medicine. I wish I could say it was like happily ever after that, but like when you become a therapist and when you are faced, you know, as therapists, we have to face our own shit. And, you know, so I didn't do that until I went to grad school.
Wow.
Also overcome the stigma of, you know, what does it mean to be a therapist? Do people believe in therapy? Do my family and friends believe in this work? And so
I was going to ask you, what do your family and friends, like after you made that switch from, you know, doctor to therapy, did you get any kind of like backlash from your parents or your family members?
I think backlash would be strong. Right. I think there was doubt.
There was doubt.
Because how many Indian people do we know that become therapists?
It's unknown.
It's the unknown, right? And I think it goes to, you know, the stereotypes that we have around like becoming a lawyer or a doctor or, you know, something money related, right? Those are established, stable careers. And so as immigrants, that's what you want your children to have, right? Yeah. Like, you know, my whole family is entrepreneurs. And so, you know, my dad, my mom both worked 50, 60, 70, 80, 100 hours a week, right? So that we could go to better schools and we could have some more stability. So to enter a field where we don't know, does it make money? Does it offer stability? Are there jobs, right? Those are the things that are important. So I think there's a good reason to have doubt in that. And when you don't know about mental health, when mental health, you know, just in the 12 years that I've been in the field, mental health has changed completely, and people's understanding has changed completely. So back then in 2011, you know, it was a very different world in terms of even for me to explain like what work do I do and all of that. So, you know, I think we've come a long way.
Yeah. I'm curious to know, you know, from a therapist standpoint, you know, your viewpoints on cycle breaking.
Yeah, you know, I think there's the behavioral aspect of cycle breaking, and then there's maybe a more existential or philosophical aspect of things. And I think these relate really specifically to South Asians and South Asian males, right? Because this is, our community is an immigrant community, right? Our families probably go back only just 1, 2, maybe 3 generations. And so, the issues that our parents went through, I know the stories that my dad has told my dad came here to the States when he was 14 and had to go to high school. What he experienced is something that I would never experience. I could never truly understand what he went through. And so when I think about cycles, the trauma that he experienced, he is going to inevitably pass something on to me. Not intentionally, right? But if he's, or our parents are experiencing anxiety or have to be really hypervigilant, right? They don't grow up in a safe environment, then they're going to pass on some of that hypervigilance to us. And that's what we talk about and think about when we think about generational and intergenerational trauma. And sometimes that conversation is so hard because they have done everything to provide for us. And so from their standpoint, they've given us more than they ever had. And so it can also for us feel guilty or shameful to say, hey, you hurt me in this way, or my upbringing has caused damage. And so, when we're thinking about breaking the cycle, then we're also thinking about finding new ways to do things that we didn't have models for.
Growing up, we didn't really share our feelings too much, so we
I
didn't
see.
know who to reach out to. It's not open. There weren't role models telling you, hey, it's okay to.
Same here. My family really didn't talk about emotions. They had a lot of emotions, but they didn't talk about it.
Yeah. I mean, growing up, all you see the male role models, they don't talk about anything like that. They just, they deal with their problems and they're good at it, and that's what you're supposed to do.
I've had a similar experience too with my dad. Like, we've opened up as I've been an adult. Mm-hmm. It's like, why don't we do this the whole time?
Telling my parents I was going to therapy allowed them to talk to me about stuff that they would think I would bring up in therapy. Just like 3 weeks ago, we had talks that we should have had like 20 years ago. Parents learn from their kids as much as kids learn from their parents. And so for parents to be like, oh, our son is taking these steps to like try to be more open and communicating with us, we should probably do the same.
And so I think that's the idea too of having conversations like this, is that we're literally breaking the cycle, because nobody who has looked like us or has come from these backgrounds that we've come from have had these conversations before.
Yeah.
And so it's just about doing something slightly differently. Behaviorally, we're doing something different. It doesn't have to necessarily be categorized as better or worse, right or wrong. That's too black or white, right? And so it just has to be a little different so that we can see, well, if I do one thing different, then the next thing might be different. And so that slight change in angle sometimes gives us a different trajectory.
So we've been talking about the issue of, South Asian American men not really opening up to each other or having conversations. What, from your perspective, what do you think is the solution, if there is one?
It's an important question, and I don't think that they're, I think this is symbolic of the work around mental health. Is I don't think that there's always one answer or a clear answer always, right? What we're really asking is a shift in culture and mindset around, now allowing ourselves to share things with people who aren't our family or aren't in our closest circles. And that's, a big part of our culture is to kind of keep the secrets and keep things inside, right? Inside our relationships or even inside ourselves. And so, I think in general for men, the big thing for us is that we've been socialized to, be strong. And for me, I don't disagree that we should be strong as men. I just disagree with the definition of what strength is. And so, I think we've been taught that being strong means that you don't feel your feelings. We talked about muting our emotions, and we especially don't feel feelings of weakness, right? And sadness, anger, failure, right? We're allowed to feel joy, but even joy is supposed to be muted, right?
Yeah.
Like to a degree. And so, in that way, as a culture, and this goes beyond just South Asian culture, this goes into many cultures, men are not supposed to express emotion. And so when you're not supposed to do something, then how do you learn how to do it and in a healthy way? And so I think for me, if we're gonna come up with solutions, then it's a lot of education. For me, I think education is a big part of this, to kind of advocate for that awareness and then to learn, right? And apply different skills for how to manage those things. You know, earlier when we were talking, you said something about like, you know, if I can control my emotions or manage my emotions, I can manage my actions, right? And sometimes that first part is not there.
Right.
When we're just stop crying, right? It just goes straight to managing or stopping the behavior rather than understanding the emotion and the reason behind it. And so I think that's where that education piece comes in.
So Ankur, when we had a conversation, just me and you one-on-one, you told me a story about a hockey player. Can you share that with us?
Yeah, so, you know, and I think this is like such a good example of breaking cycles, right? I worked with a client who was a 30-something male, and, you know, he came to therapy during COVID, which is actually when a lot of men started to go to therapy. And he, you know, one of the conversations I'll have, especially with my male therapists, or my male clients, but really all my clients, is, do you share with people in your life that you go to therapy, and how do you talk about it? And so I asked him this, and, you know, he said, I haven't really told anybody. And then we talked about it a little bit more, and I said, hey, if it ever comes up organically, you know, maybe bring it up, see what happens. And they had gone through loss in his community, and he also played like intramural hockey. And so he came to a session one time, like excitedly, was telling me the story of how, you know, after their hockey game, they had their ritualistic beers, you know, at the bar, and he just kind of said, hey guys, I've been going to therapy. And he was super anxious about it, like really scared about what the reaction was going to be, like, am I going to lose friends, some of the stuff that we've talked about. And then it was just like one by one, he could see the dominoes fall. Like, people were like, oh, you go to therapy? Like, who do you see? My wife was telling me I should go to therapy, or I've been thinking about it for like 3 years. Like, how do you get started? Like, so it was more curiosity, and he really expressed it as like this sense of relief, like both for him to share with his friends, his closest friends, that, hey, I'm going through this, and then to hear back from them like, hey, I've been doing it too, or I've been interested in it too, which I think is really like the idea here for us, is to show that it's actually not that bad, and once you get going, you will find support in your circle.
I'm curious to know what are some of the benefits that you guys have seen. Yash, can you tell us a little bit?
You get perspective, and I think that new cycle is now a positive one, because you're now looking at everything from that, I got this, I can fix it, and I don't need to do it by myself. I think that's probably the biggest benefit that you learn.
It's really helped me with my relationships with friends, family, just really deepen those relationships and not be so overly anxious or worried about them or messing them up. Is that I know that other people are going through this too. Being able to talk about it more openly, it just allows, I think, just for a happier life in general. Really deepen those relationships for me.
I definitely deepen relationships. I think, you know, I've always thought the brain is the most powerful tool that there is. And I think I'm coming at therapy from almost arrogant perspective of like, okay, how can I get even better than I am now?
Yeah.
And that's in a grand sense that, yes, I'm just trying to strengthen this weapon I got up here. And in the specifics, it's definitely just made me more open and more communicative with the people that is beneficial to be. You know, my friends, my family on stage. Point blank, it's just like, why wouldn't you do it?
Thanks so much, man. This was awesome. I want to know, like, what are you up to now? What's next for Ankur Varma? Brown Man Therapy we have, and then also, you know, you yourself are a therapist. So what do you got going on?
Yeah, you know, I'm really excited because these conversations come at a time where I'm making, you know, a pivot in my career, and so, you know, I've been in this field for 10 plus years, and I've done a lot of different roles, working as a therapist, but also as training director and supervisor, program director. And so I'm really looking forward now to working on my own practice and collaborating and partnering with one of my good friends in the field, who's also South Asian, to focus on mental health issues and more so on the South Asian diaspora. And so really excited to kind of get back into the clinical side of things. And I think, you know, even just us having this conversation just shows how big a pivot the mental health and wellness field has taken. And so I'm really just trying to stay ahead of the curve on that. And so that's kind of where the work with Brown Man Therapy is going to come back. You know, now that I'm going to get back into clinical work, I'm excited to have, you know, new creative conversations on Brown Man Therapy and you know, connect with more and more men, more and more people who, you know, are like us, have had similar experiences, and then those of us who are South Asian but have had very different experiences. And so, you know, very excited for all of that.
Good luck to you and your future. Thank you for getting back into clinical. That's awesome, man. Thank you so much. Something that I want to share to those that are watching is that it is possible. You know, let's stop talking about us, you know, wanting to have better relationships, right? Let's actually do it. And the reason why we're here today is to show that, you know, it is possible. It's pretty easy. This is the time to take that next step. And that next step is to just start talking about it.
We all have mental health. If you want to be better, stronger, faster in every facet of your life, it starts with here. No matter what you're going through, talk to somebody about it. Someone's gone through the same thing. You'll be better on the other end for it.
I think the hardest part about a conversation like this is just getting started. So I would say just find someone you love, and then just start talking.
You're at a point in your life, and there's going to be many points like this where you feel that you got to do it all by yourself. But there's so many things in our life that we do with the help of each other, and we're better for it. This, if anything, your brain, your emotions, your feelings is the most important thing, because it's going to help you do all those other things too. There's always someone there. Something I used to tell myself when I was going through the hell of it is, don't be afraid to fall. I promise you someone will catch you. There's a big world out there, over 7 billion people. Be patient, have faith. I promise someone will catch you.
So we've talked about a lot of powerful things today, and if you're thinking about going to therapy or asking for help in some way, just take the first step. You can share this link or talk to somebody in your life that has gone through a similar experience, and things get easier from there.
So we've had a very powerful conversation here today, and as you share this link, you can continue this conversation.
Where am I looking?
We're having a conversation, so just me and you. They're not there.
Okay, cool.
Okay. We're here to talk about mental health, and what was the whole thing of this?
Okay. Are we having a rap party?